Hello there, and welcome once again to Breakfast All Day. Good to see you guys. My fantastic friend Katie Walsh is back from Tribune News Agency. Yes, Alonzo will be joining later on to talk about other reviews, but we are going to begin today with The Last Duel. I'm so happy of all the people in all the world that Katie's here to talk about this movie with me. Definitely need another woman to bounce all this off of. So she is brilliant and ideal to do this with. So will you please describe The Last Duel?
Yeah, The Last Duel is based on a true story. It is based on the last, I think, judicial trial by combat that was recorded in France. So it's a true story. And it involves a rape accusation, which is at the center of the story, or it involves a rape. It's not even an accusation. But it is what sets the plot sort of in motion, or not even what sets the plot in motion. It sort of happens in the middle of the film. Matt Damon plays a knight who marries, well, he's a squire and then he becomes a knight, and he marries a woman named Marguerite. His name is Jean de Carouge, and he marries a woman named Marguerite, played by Jodie Comer. And he has this war buddy who is played by Adam Driver, and this rival played ironically by his best buddy, Ben Affleck, who is a count. He's a cousin of the king. And he comes between him and Adam Driver, or who's playing a character named Jacques Legris. And sort of in the middle of the film, Jacques Legris attacks and rapes Marguerite. He's become obsessed with her, and she tells her husband, and then her husband, Jean de Carouge, challenges Jacques Legris to a trial by combat. And it's told Rashomon style. So it's told in 3 chapters. The first chapter is Jean de Carouge's truth. The second chapter is Jacques Legris' truth. And then the third chapter is Marguerite's truth. And Ridley Scott, who's the director of the film, puts his thumb on the scale a little bit, because it says the truth according to Marguerite de Carouge, and then all the text fades away and it just says the truth. So we know who we're supposed to be aligned with. And I also think the casting has a lot to do with that as well, because Jodie Comer is such a brilliant star that there's no way that you could not. I mean, she outshines everyone in this movie, sort of rightfully so. And so I think that there's no questioning of who is in the right here.
Indeed. But the thing with the Rashomon structure, which is always interesting, is the shadings of it, right?
Yes.
Everyone's version of how they depict themselves, what tone they take, what they view their role to be. So when it's the Matt Damon character's turn, he's the righteous one, and he's hardworking and loyal and decent, and nobody appreciates him. And nobody ever gives him credit. And he's
a very nice husband. He's a great husband. You know, he's tender. He's got a wonderful relationship with his wife. She really loves and cares about him and supports him. And they're just they're 2 crazy kids trying to make their way in this world.
But then, and different tellings. And then in that version, the Adam Driver character is more malevolent. In the Adam Driver telling of it, he's charming.
Oh, yeah.
And I like that section best in a lot of ways, because it reminds us of how, well, not best, but there's a swagger to that section. Right.
Yes,
each one has a different tone. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck co-wrote this with Nicole Holofcener, which is fascinating in a million ways. But it's the first movie that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck have written since their Oscar-winning Good Will Hunting script a quarter of a century ago. And then you need that woman's voice.
Yes.
And so I don't know if you know this. This is my theory going into it, is that or coming out of it rather, that Matt Damon wrote the Matt Damon section.
Oh. And
maybe Ben Affleck wrote the Adam Driver section, which is really the Ben Affleck section.
Yes, because they're such a dominant role. Yeah, they're best buddies, and he's a libertine. The Count Pierre character, which is Ben Affleck, he's a dandy, he's a libertine. He's really impressed with Adam Driver because he's not an aristocrat, but he's very educated and he can read, which is a rarity in this world. And it's the 2 of them basically having sex parties together.
Right.
Let's just be frank about it.
Well, Adam Driver's fun. I mean, basically this whole thing comes down to the fact that Adam Driver's fun and Matt Damon isn't. Right, and that's why like the court and the public opinion and all of it goes into Adam Driver's favor because he's charming, and why, Ben Affleck's on his side because, because Carouge is no fucking fun. And I enjoy the anachronistic language in that middle section because it's, this takes place in like the late 1300s, but the way they talk to one another is so modern. It catches you off guard and also brings it home to how relevant the story is today. And then in the Jodie Comer section, she's got all the answers. She is the one running things. Yeah. And what they do, what Ridley Scott does here is you have the same camera angles and the same conversations, but maybe it's slightly off. Maybe it's off to one side a little bit. Or the tone is so markedly different in Adam Driver's version of what happened in that bedroom and Jodie Comer's version of what happened in that bedroom. And what do the words please, no really mean? Right. And so this is so relevant. I found it weirdly funny at times, but also like just totally infuriating. Yeah. Because she's property. She's property and she has to have Matt Damon's, her husband's approval to even take this to trial.
Well, that's what they say. Yeah. They say it's not a crime against her. It's a crime against Matt Damon because she is the property of Matt Damon. So that's why he is bringing this to trial, to court, to everything, because you did something to my property. But yeah, so I think this movie is working on so many different levels because you have what's happening in the script, which is, like you said, the anachronistic language, very self-reflective, I think, in a lot of ways. There's a line where Count Pierre says to Jacques Legris, he says, deny, deny, deny. And that is like a direct reference to something that Donald Trump said when talking about sexual assault allegations. And there's like there's a moment in the trial where the adjudicators of this trial are saying, oh, well, if it's a rape, then she can't get pregnant, which is literally something a lawmaker said like 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. And so the script is saying, look how modern this is. It's saying, look how regressive we are. And then I think what Ridley Scott is doing is I felt like in each section, like you're seeing things in a new light, and it's causing you to question all these inherent biases, all these little shifts in perspective and filmmaking. I mean, he's saying question everything. Question what Matt Damon's doing, question what Adam Driver's saying, question the entire thing, because in Matt Damon's section, like there might be like a little look between him and his wife that's very cute and tender. And then you see in the Jodie Comer section that she's like basically terrified and doesn't want to do this, but she doesn't have any choice because her father is basically doing a land deal for their wedding. So there's like the script, which is very self-reflective, and sort of the casting, and then the filmmaking is also saying like, pay attention to these little details and don't believe everything you see.
Right. And what's important here too is that Adam Driver, to the very end, does not believe he did anything wrong. He believes it was consensual and we couldn't help ourselves, and let's not speak of it again. You may feel guilty.
Or that's what he's saying.
Right. That's what he's saying in his version of it. That's what he's telling himself, is that he thinks it wasn't a big deal. He wants to present himself as this virtuous man, and a good friend to Matt Damon. We were good friends before, and then and he thinks he's virtuous and saying and doing all the right things, and that she was into him too. And so I think that's so important in terms of the way men lie to themselves and tell themselves, oh, it was consensual. Oh, she wanted it. Oh, look how she was dressed. There's a thing involving a dress here.
Right. And the way their friends back them up, and the way Pierre says, oh, don't worry. I'll be the one in charge of this. You'll be fine. I believe you. And I also thought it was interesting. So there's this little sex party that they have with some maidens, and he sort of chases one of these gals around a table, and it's the exact same choreography in terms of the blocking when he rapes Marguerite. And you can see it, especially in his version, you can see that he thinks it's like a little sex game, like, oh, don't, no, and but in both sections, she's saying, no, please, no. And I think that even in his section, it's a very brutal attack. And in her section, it's just even more terrifying.
Yeah. But in his section, he's like a man and he's taking her because that's what men do. Yeah, little details too. Those are big emotional moments, but then there are little details like how her shoes come off.
Yes.
When and how her shoes come off, and what is the tone of that? And so I think in big ways and small ways, this is very careful in, the importance of perspective. I sat there watching this. I went to go see it last night because I couldn't make the screening. I actually paid money to go see it in a theater. And I found myself sitting there making this disapproving kind of Marge Simpson grumble the whole time, like, like so mad the whole time. And yet, I hope people see this. I think people, I feel like it's being marketed all wrong. I feel like it's being marketed as like, this is a big Ridley Scott jousting movie. And it is eventually.
Yeah. And it's
but
like,
it's not really.
The craft is amazing. Like the cinematography is amazing. The score is amazing. The costumes, like if you want a big costume drama period piece, Game of Thrones with movie stars, like this is absolutely it, but it's all in service of telling the story, which I really appreciate. And it's kind of funny. I was going to say the casting, like it took me a really long time to believe Matt Damon because he's got this horrible mullet, this big old scar on his face, but he's also just talking like Matt Damon. And he's in the beginning, he's like, we lost Limoges. And I'm like, I don't buy this guy. Like, what?
How do you like them apples?
Right. and I'm like, no, like I don't buy him as a medieval knight. But then it just suddenly clicks and you realize that like, he's not the hero. No. He is an oaf. I just kept writing in my notes. I just kept writing oaf, because he is an oaf. And he, even in his own section, like he's not cool. He he always says the wrong thing. And, so you're starting to realize you're like, oh, all of these guys are the worst. And Count Pierre is a horrible asshole. And, and then the horrible thing is that Adam Driver is so hot and he's got beautiful long hair, and he is charming. And then you're just like, you start realizing how awful he is, and you're like, no, damn it.
Well, the fact that he's hot, yes, but the fact that he's hot and that the women comment on the fact that he's hot becomes a crucial plot point.
It does. They're like, oh, well, you said he was handsome, and therefore you wanted it. And so it's like the casting and the presentation of all of them is like actually so perfect, because at first I was like, I don't buy this, but then it just works and it clicks into place. And I do think it is a self-reflective movie. So you kind of have to have that little element of maybe artifice, or I don't know if I completely buy this, because then you can kind of examine it from a remove instead of like sinking into it as you might like a fantasy film.
Yeah. I think the fact that you do have Matt Damon and Ben Affleck together calls attention to itself and contemporizes it somewhat. And the way that they're talking, especially how profane Ben Affleck is in this, makes it more modern. And that's clearly by design to bring it home to us, to remind us like, hey, we're not all that far removed from how repressive this is. Also, Ben Affleck's really good in this. This is part of why I think he wrote his section. I suspect that they all tinkered on each other, but I feel like he must have been the driving force behind that section, because he's smart enough to know what his strengths are. And playing that kind of swaggering asshole is totally in his wheelhouse, right? Yeah. Look back at like the beginnings of his career with like, Shakespeare in Love and Boiler Room, where he like swaggers in, he's an asshole in a supporting role, and then he saunters off. And like, that's a good, fun use of Ben Affleck, like smoldering and dark and heavy. Batman, for example, I don't think is a great use of Ben Affleck, but here he gets to have terrible hair and wear flashy clothes and just be a dick. And it's really fun to watch.
Yeah. And he like makes it work like through that bright yellow fringe and dyed chin piece and dyed eyebrows. And they don't even explain why his hair is that color, but it must be a historical accuracy or something. But Yeah, he really works, although even through looking like a new metal bassist from like 1999.
Somebody on Twitter said that he looks like Corky St. Clair in Waiting for Guffman.
Like yes, he does. He does that like flat, round.
It's like a bowl cut, but it's also like super short. It's hideous. Anyway, so but Jodie Comer gets some great hair. So
she's awesome, and like she just rocks. Mm-hmm. Like I would not be surprised if they campaign her for Best Actress. She just is so great in this. She rocks. And I was gonna say, like, per your comment about like sitting there making Marge Simpson noises in the restroom, the women's restroom after the screening was like buzzing.
Oh, good. It
is the place to be after that movie's over, because it's just women being like, and then he said rape couldn't cause pregnancy. Like it was just all these women just like processing what they had just seen and kind of talking about how it is so contemporary, and that gives us something to reflect upon.
It's a meeting in the ladies' room.
Yes,
but also,
exactly.
Right, and that's important. But I suspect also that for a lot of folks watching this, that it might be quite triggering, because it's brutal. We have to watch the rape happen twice, and it's brutal. And so just be warned if this is something that you have been through yourself, or if it's just the notion of it is understandably shocking to you. They don't hold back in showing this to you. And that's important to telling the story, but it might also make it difficult for some folks to watch.
Definitely so, take care in watching if that is triggering.
Yes. What is your number, my friend, out of 10?
I think I give it an 8.
Okay. I was going to say 8 also. So our number is an 8. The Last Duel is only in theaters, right? It's not streaming.
Yeah. And I would say like it's a big visual feast. I think it looked gorgeous on the big screen. So if you feel comfortable going to the theater, I'd highly recommend it. But if you want to watch it at home when it becomes available, that's okay too.
It's long. It's like 2.5 hours long.
But I didn't feel that long to me.
No, me neither.
Because I was shocked when I looked at the running time afterwards. I was like, oh my God, 2.5 hours. It didn't feel that long to me.
Yeah, I was into it. Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you so much, my great friend. So wonderful to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And folks can find you on Twitter where?
At Katie Walsh STX.
Indeed, because you're from St. Croix.
Yes, that's the airport code for St. Croix. So that's what that means. It's not Katie Walsh's Texas.
But it might be. Why can't you have Texas? I think you've earned it.
Just give it to me.
All right. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. And we'll have more reviews coming up later on. You can find us in all of the places at Be Fast All Day on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can follow us on our Patreon, patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. We are currently doing the morning show. Next week, we are going to do our runoff on our Halloween movie. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, you can't see Katie's amazing Titan t-shirt. The first film from director Julia Ducournau, Raw, has been in our runoff. Raw versus Audition.
Oh my God. I can't choose. I wouldn't be able to choose.
So come check us out for that. Thanks, you guys. We appreciate you. Bye-bye.
Bye.